All right, ready for a deep dive into feminism.
Let's do it.
We're tackling this Wikipedia article you all sent, and wow, there's a lot to unpack.
It's a big one.
So no time to waste, let's jump right in. When we say feminism, what are we really talking about?
At its core, it's about equality between the sexes.
Okay, equality, got it. But not about, like, female superiority.
No, not at all. That's a common misconception. Feminism is about dismantling the systems that have historically given men an advantage over women.
Right, like that whole patriarchy thing.
Exactly. And that system, it's touched everything, from voting rights to who gets paid more for the same work.
Speaking of voting, did you know that feminist movements were basically the driving force behind women getting the right to vote in so many Western countries?
Absolutely. They were instrumental in those legal and social changes.
Wow, I knew they were important, but I didn't realize how key they were to that.
Oh, they were. And it wasn't easy. They faced massive opposition. But their dedication, it paved the way for huge changes. And that's just the first wave of feminism.
Right. The waves, it's like this whole roadmap of how the movement has evolved over time.
Exactly. You've got the first wave fighting for basic rights like suffrage. Then things shift.
So what comes after suffrage?
Well, you've got the second wave crashing in during the 1960s. Think Betty Friedan, Germaine Greer, women who were saying, hey, our lives are about more than just being housewives.
It's amazing how much changed in such a short amount of time. It went from just voting to this whole, like, upheaval of traditional gender roles.
It did. And it brought topics like equal pay and reproductive rights to the forefront.
And those are conversations we're still having today, which is kind of crazy when you think about it.
It is. And then you have the third wave coming in saying, hold on a minute, not all women experience things the same way.
That's where things get really interesting, right? With the whole idea of intersectionality.
Exactly. Think bell hooks, Gloria and Zaldúa, and this focus on how race, class, gender identity, all of it intersects to shape a woman's experience.
It's like feminism saying, hey, we're not a monolith. We're a diverse group with diverse needs and experiences.
Precisely. And that diversity is a strength, not a weakness.
Okay, so we've got the first wave fighting for basic rights, the second wave pushing for deeper social change, the third wave demanding we acknowledge the diversity of women's experiences. And it makes you wonder, where do you even go from there?
Well, that's where the fourth wave comes in, and it's happening right now.
This is where we see the power of social media.
Exactly. The hashtag #MeToo movement, for example, showed how quickly a message can spread and how powerful collective action can be.
It's like feminism has gone viral in a good way. But it's not just about online activism, is it?
Not at all. Feminism has had a profound impact on almost every aspect of our lives. Take the art world, for example.
Wait, really? How has feminism changed the art world?
It sparked entirely new ways of thinking about and creating art. Art, feminist film theory, these challenge traditional ideas about gender and give a voice to female experiences.
So we're not just talking about, like, burning bras.
Not that there's anything wrong with a good bra burning, but no, it's about challenging the status quo through creative expression.
And it's not just art, right? Even religion, which can sometimes feel very traditional, has felt the influence of feminism.
It has. We're seeing more and more people pushing for female leadership within different faiths, challenging interpretations of religious texts that have traditionally placed women in subordinate roles.
Wow, so it's like this ripple effect touching everything.
Yeah.
What about science? Has feminism had any impact there?
It has, particularly in fields like biology and gender studies. Feminist scholars have challenged traditional, often male-centric views of gender, arguing that it's not just about biology, but also about social conditioning.
So it's not nature versus nurture, it's both.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the complex interplay between biology and social factors in shaping our understanding of gender.
This is blowing my mind. Feminism is way more nuanced than I ever realized.
It really is. And the more you learn about it, the more you realize how much it has shaped the world we live in today. And a big part of that is understanding the different schools of thought within feminism. Because it's not a monolith, there isn't just one type of feminism, there are many.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, feminism isn't just about women fighting for the right to vote. It's about so much more than that. It's about questioning everything, pushing boundaries, and ultimately fighting for a world where everyone is treated equally, regardless of gender.
That's a great way to put it. And understanding the different branches of feminism can help us understand those nuances even better.
All right, so let's dive into those branches, because this is where things get really interesting.
Ready to explore the many branches of the feminist family tree?
I am. But before we do, something's been bugging me. With all this talk about waves and progress, does anyone ever say, okay, that's it, feminism is done? Like, mission accomplished.
That's a really interesting question, and it actually connects to this idea of post-feminism that the Wikipedia article mentions. It's a whole bunch of different reactions that have popped up since the 1980s.
Post-feminism, so are they saying feminism is outdated? Like, it's had its time, but we've moved on?
Well, some post-feminists argue that, yeah, the main goals of those earlier waves, like legal and political equality, those have been achieved. So in their view, women can vote, they can have careers. What more do they want?
So wait, we were just talking about how much inequality still exists, especially when you consider race, class, sexual orientation.
Exactly. And that's what other post-feminists would emphasize. They'd say the idea that feminism is over is completely ignoring the ongoing struggles for equal pay, reproductive rights, the fact that women are still underrepresented in positions of power.
So it's like this internal debate within feminism itself. Some saying we're done, others saying not even close.
Exactly. And it just shows you that even this term post-feminism, which is suggesting we're past feminism, is still totally wrapped up in these ideas. It's like this ripple effect. Feminism throws a stone in the water, and those waves just keep going.
And sometimes those waves, they kind of crash into each other, right? Because I've been hearing this term TERF a lot lately, trans-exclusionary radical feminism, which honestly doesn't sound very inclusive or welcoming.
Yeah, and that's because it's not. This is a really important but definitely controversial part of the conversation. Basically, TERF ideology says that trans women are not women. Their view of gender is very narrowly defined, usually based only on biological sex.
But hold on, haven't we been saying that a core part of feminism is challenging those super rigid ideas about gender? That it's not all about biology?
You're exactly right. And that's why a lot of feminists see TERF ideology as transphobic, plain, and simple. They argue that it completely goes against the whole point of feminism, which is fighting for all women, including trans women.
It's about understanding that inclusivity is non-negotiable if you're talking about real equality. Okay, so we've talked about the waves of feminism, the different branches, even some of the pushback it's gotten. But how has all of this actually played out in the real world? What tangible impact has feminism had?
Well, for starters, we can't forget about all the legal battles feminists have won. We already talked about suffrage, but there's so much more. Feminists have been fighting for and winning laws that protect women from things like domestic violence, sexual assault, all over the world.
Those are huge. Actually having laws that say, yes, violence against women is a serious problem.
Yeah.
Giving women ways to seek justice that they didn't have before.
Exactly. And it's not just about having the laws written down somewhere. It's about changing attitudes, making it so violence against women just isn't tolerated.
And what about reproductive rights? That feels like another area where feminism has been crucial.
Absolutely. Access to contraception, safe and legal abortion, these are things people are still fighting tooth and nail over. But feminist activism has been absolutely key in making sure women have the right to make their own choices about their bodies, their reproductive health.
It's about bodily autonomy, having control over your own life choices. And I imagine education is another place where feminism has made big changes.
You're right on the money. Feminists have always said education is key to empowering women. I mean, there was a time when women weren't even allowed to attend universities.
I can't even fathom that. It's wild how much has changed because of the people who fought for those rights.
It is, and it's not even just about getting women access to education, it's about changing what's being taught, too. Feminists have been pushing for curricula that are more inclusive, that actually represent women's experiences, women's contributions.
So moving away from those totally male-dominated narratives that have been around forever, making sure women's voices are heard, their stories are told. But it does make you wonder, with all this progress, do we still need feminism in the 21st century?
That's a question people ask all the time. And honestly, the answer is a resounding yes. Yes, we've made progress, but we still live in a world where women are paid less than men for the same work, where they experience way more poverty, more violence, and where their voices are often ignored or silenced.
It's like there are all these invisible barriers, all these expectations that can hold women back.
Exactly. And that's why feminism is still so important. It's about continuing to challenge those norms, to fight for equality everywhere, and to create a world where everyone, regardless of gender, can truly reach their full potential.
It's about recognizing that this fight for equality isn't about reaching some finish line. It's an ongoing process. And it takes constant work, Constant education, constant action.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And it's a journey that's not just for women to take. Men are crucial in this too.
Now you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Because let's be real, those super narrow gender roles, they hurt everyone, not just women.
Exactly. When you think about it, feminism benefits men too by challenging these limited definitions of masculinity. It allows men to experience a fuller range of emotions, consider different career paths, just exist in the world in ways they might not have felt were open to them before.
It's about saying, hey, men can be caring partners, nurturing parents, they can be vulnerable, expressive, without being seen as weak.
Precisely. Feminism is about breaking free from those boxes we try to put people in and allowing everyone to embrace their full humanity. It's about a world where everyone, regardless of gender, can thrive and be their authentic selves.
And that's a world I think we can all get behind.
Absolutely. We've covered a lot of ground here. But if there's one thing I want our listeners to take away, it's that feminism isn't the scary word. It's not about man-hating or seeking superiority.
It's about creating a world that's fairer, more just for everyone. And that's something worth fighting for.
I couldn't agree more.
You know, before we move on, there's something else I wanted to touch on. The Wikipedia article mentions this idea of pro-feminism, and I'm really curious about it.
It is interesting, isn't it? Pro-feminism is basically saying, I support the goals of feminism, but without necessarily calling yourself a feminist.
So being an ally to the movement, essentially.
Exactly. And you often see this term used to describe men who are actively supporting feminist ideas.
Like men who are at the marches, who call out sexist jokes, who advocate for equal pay, that kind of thing.
Yes. And there are even pro-feminist men's groups working to dismantle toxic masculinity, promote healthier relationships between men and women. It's really cool to see.
It's men realizing they have a certain amount of privilege, and they can use that to make space for women's voices, to support gender equality in a real way.
Exactly. It's men and women working together as allies to create that fairer, more just world for everyone. Because honestly, this isn't just a women's issue, it's a human issue.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Okay, so we've dug into what feminism is, its history, its impact, the reactions to it, but it feels like we've only scratched the surface.
We have. There's always more to learn about feminism, more to unpack, more to discuss.
That's part of what makes it so interesting, though, right? It's this constantly evolving movement that keeps us on our toes, always makes us think critically about the world around us.
It's a journey, not a destination. And it's a journey that requires us to constantly be learning, questioning, evolving our own understanding of gender and equality.
So as we keep going with this deep dive into these Wikipedia articles, let's keep that in mind. There's always more to discover. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about the ways of feminism, the different branches, the debates.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. And you know what's striking to me? This movement has serious staying power. We're talking over a century of activism, of pushing for change.
It really speaks to the fact that feminism isn't just some, abstract idea.
Right. It's not just a chapter in a history book.
Exactly. It's a living, breathing force. And it's constantly adapting to meet the challenges of the time.
Which is what makes it so fascinating to study.
Yeah.
Because, let's be real, that fight for equality, it's not over.
Not by a long shot. We're still living in a world where women are held to all these different standards, where they face discrimination, violence, just because they're women.
And it's not enough to just change laws. We have to change hearts and minds, too.
That's where the real work comes in.
Because you can't just legislate equality.
Right.
Right. It has to come from a place of, real understanding, empathy.
And a desire to build a better world for everyone, regardless of gender.
Exactly. Which is why these conversations are so important, even when they're tough.
Especially when they're tough, we have to be willing to get uncomfortable, to challenge our own biases.
Because real progress, real change, that takes being open to learning, to growing. So if someone's listening to all of this and maybe feeling a little overwhelmed, what's the one thing you want them to take away from this deep dive into feminism?
That's a great question. You know, I think the most crucial thing to remember is that feminism isn't about taking something away from anyone.
It's not about making men the enemy or anything like that.
Not at all. It's about building a world where everyone has the chance to thrive, to reach their full potential, regardless of gender.
It's about understanding that equality, it benefits everyone, not just women.
Exactly. When women are empowered, when they have a voice, when they're at the table making decisions, society as a whole is better for it.
It's like we unlock a whole new level of human potential when everyone's on a level playing field.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay, before we wrap up, you mentioned earlier that feminism is always evolving.
Right, it's not stuck in the past, it's dynamic.
So where do you see it going from here? What are the next frontiers for feminism?
Well, one thing I think we'll see is a continued focus on intersectionality.
Making sure that when we talk about feminism, we're talking about all women.
Exactly. And we're already seeing that in action with movements like Black Lives Matter, the fight for trans rights.
It's about recognizing that oppression, it takes many forms, and we can't address one without addressing them all.
And I think we'll also see feminism pushing back against those really ingrained ideas about family and work.
Like challenging the idea that childcare is a woman's job, even when both parents work.
Exactly. Or why we put so much value on these traditional career paths but undervalue caregiving work, which often falls on women.
It's about reimagining what a fair, just society looks like. One that values all kinds of work, all kinds of families.
And I think technology is going to continue to play a huge role, too.
We've already seen how powerful social media can be for activists, for getting the word out, for giving a platform to marginalized voices.
Right. And as tech keeps evolving, we'll find even more innovative ways to organize, to make our voices heard, to push for change.
It's a really exciting time to be part of this movement.
It really is. There's still a long way to go for sure, but there's a lot of hope.
I agree. Because at its core, that's what feminism is about, right? Hope.
Hope for a better world, a more just world, a world where everyone has a chance to thrive.
And that's something worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the world of feminism. It's been amazing exploring all of this with you.
It really has.
And for everyone listening, we hope this has sparked your own curiosity, that you'll keep learning, keep asking questions, because this conversation, it doesn't end here.
It's an ongoing dialogue, and we all have a role to play.
So keep learning, keep challenging, keep pushing for a better world. And thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.